Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us on this very special webinar, the Instruction Manual for Humans. Today, what I'd like to just explain a little bit about, alongside the exercise and sports science students that we have here, I want you guys to learn about what your body and your brain needs to be highly productive in any situation. And we'll use workplace and work as a bit of an example throughout this. But also too, this flows into other areas of life as well. So sit back and enjoy the information. Before we do get stuck into that information, which you can apply both personally and professionally with your teams at work, just like to have a quick little disclaimer, like with any medical or health related information, this is a guide, and we have related it back to the idea of, the TV instructions. Now, you wouldn't fumble through the TV instructions if you're looking to buy a TV. And similarly, you wouldn't also look through the how-to instruction manual to rewire the entire internals of your TV because the colours were mixed up. The instruction manual is there to point out the things that the manufacturer thinks is commonplace and common sense, but sometimes finding how to put the subtext onto your new TV, you need a degree in rocket science. So that's some of the, the aim of today is to give you information and tools that you can then take and speak with someone face to face from the health industry. So why are we here today? Well, I would personally like for you to value your staff and your own body and brain as the biggest asset to your business. We're going to work out what is core stability, because it's more than just your muscles. How can you achieve self-regulation, the risks associated with sedentary behaviour, and the physical activity recommendations that you can complete to avoid those risks, ergonomic and environmental changes to improve productivity, playfulness and risk-taking, and also how you can implement some of these strategies with yourself and with your team. And then we can discuss the next steps from there once you have that basic instruction manual at your fingertips. So why us? Well, my name's Jackie and I'm an occupational therapist, and I run Early Links. And at the moment we have second year exercise and sports science students from the University of Sydney with us. So we have Angus Heel, Olivia Casper, Nick Feather and Michael Kazmanowski. Now, these guys have worked their butts off to get this presentation ready. They've brought a lot of science and a lot of information to this discussion that then we've melded in with the occupational therapy and the practical new perspective approach that OT brings to workplace productivity and health in general. Okay, my first question to you is, what is core? Okay, so type into the questions box, the chat box, what you think core stability or what you think core is. Is it muscles? Is it a corset? Is it stability or safety? What is core to you? Now we're going to go through in the following slides and we're going to outline what we believe core is from all the literature that we've read and also from the experiences that we've worked with over the past few years. When we've really started delving into this core stability component. Now, there are some feeds coming through in that live chat. Most people saying it's muscles, it's a corset. Yep, someone's even named transverse abdominis in there, which yes is one of the muscles in our core. But a lot of people are really focusing in on this idea of mechanical core. Okay, and I'm glad no one said it's a six-pack, rock hard abs, stuff like that. Very glad to hear that. So what we'll do is we'll move on and go through understanding real core.
So when we talk about core, we're talking about more than the physical aspect of core, which is what most people think of when they think of core. So there's actually 4 different types of core that we're referring to. These being mechanical, developmental, neurological, and spiritual core. The first one of these is mechanical core, which is what most people think of, which is the physical function of core. These jobs include stability, maintenance of internal pressure, and movement. The most important of these is the maintenance of internal pressure. So the body wants to ideally maintain constant pressure in the intra-abdominal area, no matter if the person is breathing in or out, if they're moving, doesn't matter, the pressure stays constant always. So a common problem with people who experience lower back pain is that these muscles in the video are not functioning properly. So the muscles of the core, including the pelvic floor and the transverse abdominis, are not working properly. So the back muscles, which is the multifidus, has to do a stabilization job, which is not its primary function. So a lot of people will feel pain back there. So what we do, we try to use a lot of different exercises to alleviate this lower back pain that a lot of your employees will be feeling. So different exercises that we can do and will eliminate these symptoms of lower back pain. Now Jackie will explain the other types of core.
Okay, the second part of core is developmental core. And the question that I ask is, what secrets do babies have? How is it possible that a baby who has only the capacity to cry, drink, and sleep somehow has a way of going from this cute little bundle of joy that can't really do a lot, apart from make adults go a bit gaga, to suddenly start moving its head and controlling its body and finding its feet and then learning how to roll over and starting to move up into gravity, and finally they're up and crawling about and causing havoc around the house. But what we really look at when we look at developmental core is, how do babies go from a bundle of joy to a terror that crawls around the house? And it's quite simple. There's some primitive reflex patterns that live in the brainstem, and essentially when a baby is born, they have these default messages that allow their body to react to certain stimuli, whether that's turning their head to one side or a touch sensation across their cheek. What that allows these primitive reflex patterns to generate is purposeful movement. Okay, so the brainstem gets a bit of information. It says, great, that means I need to do this reflex with my body. And that reflex then drives more processes in the higher areas of the brain. And once those higher areas of the brain start to develop, and there's more practice using those parts of the brain, the baby then is able to consciously decide, I'm going to roll over, and consciously decide, oh, I like that toy on the other side of the room, I want to move towards it. Now, what does this mean for adults when we look at developmental core? Well, a couple of things. One, around 30% of people retain these primitive reflex patterns, and they start to interfere with our conscious movement patterns. So we can work to turn off these reflexes. We're not going to make them disappear completely because we do need them, and they do live in the brainstem, and that's fine, but we just don't want them overriding our conscious movement ideas. The second thing we can do is we can actually be really strong moving in and out of these different patterns, and we can go back and rehearse and practice these developmental reflexive patterns that allow our body to move in certain strengths and patterns of strength. So that's where babies have a secret. The other secret too is that we start to develop core stability within our mouth. So when a baby only has head and neck control, their core is essentially in their mouth, and it's the pressure that they can create in that suction. So when they suck or blow or breathe, they create a suction within their core, and that's their mouth. Okay, as a baby starts to move more of its chest, that core then stretches from the mouth to the chest. And again, as baby starts to get up onto 4 points, onto hands and knees or hands and feet, we again start to see that core dropping lower and lower into the belly, and that is what gives us the intra-abdominal pressure that was spoken about just before by Angus when we talked about mechanical core. Okay, so 2 parts to why babies have all the secrets. One is they've got primitive reflex patterns that drive that movement unconsciously into having core. So why can't we do the same as adults? Let's use what we have and what we can improve on to build our core stability. And the second part is making sure that, we're using that breath and breathing to tie all that movement patterning together. The third part of core is our neurological core. Now this is the switch that tells our mechanical and muscular core to actually start working. This is the feedback from the outside world into the system, our body, that says, hey, you should probably turn up that core strength right now, or hey, yeah, you're pretty good. You don't really need to be switching on that core really hard. It can just hum along in the background. And the way this audio-visual loop works is that our ears perceive a sound, and that sound triggers us to search for danger with our eyes. And in doing that, we recruit this inner tone, this postural alertness that actually starts to drive our sense of awareness. And it's that sense of awareness that then feeds back into the core, the muscular core, and the developmental core to say, hey, yeah, we need a bit more support here. And two, our inner ear provides that balance and orientation. So our vestibular or balance system. Okay, so our neurological core is really the switch that turns everything else on. And if there is a miswiring or a slow speed within either three of these parts, then we don't get the trigger, we don't get the switch flicked. And you can have the strongest muscular core, but if it doesn't turn on at the right time, at the right intensity, there is no point having rock hard abs or really strong muscular corset underneath. No point whatsoever. Now, the last part of core is our spiritual core. And when we talk about spirit and spirituality in health, I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about the connection we have with ourself in a way that is both playful, that is both centered, and comes from and is built from everything we've experienced, both in our epigenetics, so our parents and their parents' DNA that gets passed to us, but also through our entire development from embryo right through to birth and the time after. Okay, so in spiritual core we talk a lot about primal play and primal movement. You can see there the 7 chakras, that also plays into it. We also then have this embryonic state where different parts of how our embryo started to form do actually have a physical manifestation after we're born. You know, there are lots of movement patterns and different parts of our way of being that come from that embryonic stage and come from that womb-like stage. You know, mothers who have had stressful pregnancies quite often give birth to babies that have sleep or feeding difficulties. You know, we are a product of not only our mother during pregnancy, but our parents' DNA and their parents' DNA and the epigenetics that get coded into that. So spiritual core is something that gives us that sense of how we connect to ourselves, and once we've connected to ourselves, how then do we then connect out into the world? And without that stable mechanical base, with that neurological switch that turns on, and the right developmental sequence to give us the strength of core, we can't actually access this spiritual core. We can't access the way we connect inward, and then we can't connect with the outside world as well as we'd like to. And to be honest, isn't that what productivity is all about? Our ability to delve inwards, find the answers and the information, and then connect that back out into the outside world. Because productivity is essentially measured outside the body and outside the world, you know, in that outside world. So, yeah, we do need all 4 stages of core to be highly productive in the workforce. Self-regulation. Now, when we talk about self-regulation in an occupational therapy sense, I really like using the ALERT program. It was developed by 2 OTs in America, and essentially what it talks about is the fact that in any situation, our internal engine can either be running too fast or too slow or just right. And when our self-regulation system is working well and there's no errors in the system, what we get is the ability to change our zone of regulation compared with what the environment expects. So if I'm on a football field playing a game of touch, my engine is going to need to play a little bit faster than if I was sitting inside reading a book. Now, Self-regulation is your ability to judge what's happening in the environment, what the required energy or regulation zone is, look internally and say, do I match that level of alertness? And if not, to change that regulation state. Now, if there is a bit of a mismatch or a misfiring within this self-regulation system, what you'll find is that you're either too fast or too slow for that situation. So if I'm again out on the football field playing touch footy, what can happen is if I'm feeling a bit too slow, I'm not going to be able to engage, but that level of too slow might be just right for reading a book on a Sunday afternoon. So this idea of self-regulation is matching the environmental requirements with my level of energy. Okay, and the way we change that regulation state is through our senses. So do I always eat a high energy piece of food and make sure that I've gotten changed, into my sports clothes and, driven my car to the sports ground before I get to play my game of touch? Did I need to stimulate my mouth, my internal organs, my sense of touch by getting changed, my sense of movement by getting in the car to change my regulation state? So self-regulation looks at the patterns of behaviour that we all instinctively have, and sometimes we need to refine those behaviours or routines, but we can use that sensory information and that sensory changes to make sure we are in that just right zone and that our brain and our engine aren't running on overdrive when we're supposed to be sitting at our desk. Or similarly, the 3:30itis hasn't kicked in and we need to rev ourselves up to get back into that just right zone.
Sedentary behaviour. So what is sedentary behaviour? It is classified as any waking activity that has a low energy expenditure and a sitting or reclining posture. Sitting is almost always sedentary. Sedentary behaviour is increasing as advancements in technology has reduced the amount of physical labour required to do work, and the creation of computers has streamlined society into a technological era with large amounts of work undertaken behind the desk and monitor. With the inventions of televisions, smartphones and laptops, people have reduced the physical activity levels as they spend large amounts of time on these items. Work. Around 2/3 of the population engage in work, and adults spend at least 1/3 of their waking hours working. For an individual, this can equate to 40 to 50 years of their life spent working. So this is an important element to an individual's identity, social status, health and economic well-being. Office work commonly involves sitting at a desk interacting with computer and paper-based information. The work itself thus provides little other potentially beneficial physical activity. So how are these related? A study by Perry et al. Found that work time contributed to 36.5 hours per week of total sedentary behaviour. On work days, sedentary time was proportionally greater during work hours compared to non-work hours, and there was proportionally less physical activity during work hours on work days. Office workers spent the majority of their time both at work and during non-work hours in either sedentary or light activity. Why is it important? There is a pattern of sedentary and physical activity exposure of office work with a link to increased health risk for workers. With people undertaking work as a source of income and a majority of the day, this is a very important aspect of a person's life and can have a huge impact on their health and well-being. Some of the health risks that arise from sedentary behaviour, both at home and in the workplace, can include increases in all causes of mortality, cardiovascular and respiratory disease, diabetes, obesity, high blood pressure, osteoporosis, depression and anxiety. These will be explained in further detail by Nick.
So as we can see here, there's a 2% increase in all-cause mortality risk per hour per day of sitting. So obviously we don't want to increase your employees' risk of death just because they're sitting too much at their desk. We're going to go through ways in which we can prevent this. So why is it a risk? There's a few studies here that talk about why sedentary behaviour is a risk. So one is because of decreased metabolism. There's also the compression of the vagus nerve, and also the last one is talking about mental problems with mental health that arise from sedentary behaviour, and we'll explain these further on the coming slides. So the benefits of exercise. So they're split into both health benefits and productivity benefits. So we'll start with the health benefits. So a lack of exercise increases your risk of cardiovascular disease, obesity, type 2 diabetes and respiratory disease due to decreased metabolism. However, exercise increases metabolism. We'll see why this is a good thing in terms of these different problems that can arise from the lack of exercise. So the first one, cardiovascular disease. This comes about due to a lack of exercise because of the body's decreased ability to metabolize fats. As a result, atherosclerosis can occur because of the body's decreased ability to metabolize low-density lipoproteins, which is the bad cholesterol in particular. With more of this floating around in the blood, it can damage the artery walls, resulting in a plaque which increases blood pressure, and if ruptured, can result in a blood clot that can block off an artery supplying blood to, say, the brain, which can cause a stroke, or the heart, causing a heart attack. With exercise, however, fat metabolism is greatly increased, so the risk of atherosclerosis and raised blood pressure is greatly reduced. Lack of exercise also increases the risk of obesity, and this is again due to the body's decreased ability to metabolize sugars and fats, which then get stored as fat in adipose tissue when there's too much of these, which causes you to become overweight and obese. With exercise, however, your energy burning pathways are enhanced, and muscle mass is also increased, meaning you metabolize sugars and fats during and also post-exercise. When you're sedentary at work, it means that if you have exercise that morning, you're then still going to be burning through your fuels and decreasing your risk of becoming overweight or obese. Lack of exercise also increases the risk of type 2 diabetes. So type 2 diabetes is where your blood sugar levels are too high. This comes about due to a high sugar diet where you constantly spike your insulin and also a lack of exercise to burn or metabolize that sugar. The hormone insulin removes blood sugar from the blood, transporting it to muscle cells, liver cells, and if you have any excess, it goes to fat cells for storage as fat. After years of being in a hyperglycemic state, so that's where your blood sugar is really high, your insulin is constantly spiked, so it starts to stop working as well, meaning that blood sugars remain high and type 2 diabetes occurs. Type 2 diabetes has many bad health impacts, so it can cause blindness, can stuff up the circulation to your limbs and cause amputation, so it's definitely something that you don't want your employees to be getting. Exercise, however, increases your insulin sensitivity as your muscles start to metabolize the sugar stored in the muscle and then tap into the blood sugar, liver and adipose stores once these stores in the muscles are depleted. So hence this reduces the risk of type 2 diabetes. Finally, we come on to cardiorespiratory disease, which increases with a lack of exercise due to a decrease in VO2 max. So your VO2 max is the maximum amount of oxygen that your body can consume and is a good indicator of cardiorespiratory fitness. A low VO2 max will mean the ability of your body to uptake and transport oxygen to use in aerobic metabolism is decreased and your risk of disease is increased. Exercise, however, increases your VO2 max, meaning that there is more and better oxygen delivery to the body cells and decreased risk of respiratory disease. Finally, in terms of health, we come on to mental health. So exercise has a really profound effect on this as it increases the release of endorphins such as dopamine, which is the happy hormone. The benefits of this is that it decreases anxiety and the risk of depression. So overall your staff are going to be more mentally stable. So summing up on all the health benefits, as we can see here, sedentary behaviour can cause a lot of detrimental health effects, which are going to impact on your staff, cause more doctor visits, maybe mean you have to fork out more money for that. So having exercise decreases the risk of these, and it's going to be really beneficial for your staff in general and also for them while they're working. In terms of productivity, there's lots of benefits here. So the first one we'll talk about is metabolism. So with an increased metabolism, this is going to enhance the way that the fuels are utilised in the body, such as the delivery of carbs to the brain, as the brain predominantly uses carbohydrates to function. So this is going to increase your alertness and cognitive function. It's also going to increase your fuel metabolism in the muscles, so that your employees can say they're typing or something, they're going to be able to type for longer and faster without fatiguing. In terms of mental health, as we talked about before, you increase your endorphins such as dopamine, So it'll make your workers feel much better about themselves, increase their cognitive function, and also improve alertness and therefore their productivity. In terms of cardiorespiratory fitness, so as we saw before, exercise increases or improves your VO2 max, which means that you'll have increased oxygen to the brain, improving alertness and cognitive function, as well as increased oxygen to the muscles to aid in fuel utilisation so that your employees can again work harder and for longer. And the final thing that we've got here is information on the vagus nerve. So this nerve goes from the top of your brain all the way down into your gut. It's been found that prolonged sitting compresses the vagus nerve. This affects gut bacteria on brain chemistry, stress response and behaviour. So having an exercise break is going to release that pressure and thus improve cognitive function and alertness. So as we can see here, exercise definitely has great benefits on the productivity of your staff. So ways in which we can do this. At work, a study has shown that the best way to utilise exercise to increase productivity and decrease negative health impacts is frequent moderate physical activity breaks. And then in general, what we should encourage your staff to be doing when they're out of work is to be accumulating 150 to 300 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity a day, or 75 to 150 minutes of vigorous intensity physical activity per week. Yeah. So as just to clarify here, moderate intensity physical activity can simply be just walking your dog. It doesn't have to be really hard, whereas the vigorous one would maybe be more going for a jog or doing some sort of interval training, stuff like that. And also we see here that doing muscle strengthening activities on at least 2 days a week is really beneficial. So maybe if there's a gym close by to where you guys work, that could definitely be worth looking into to get your employees in there to get the positive benefits of exercise. And also at the bottom we've got the sedentary behaviour guidelines. So as we just talked about, we should minimise the amount of time spent in prolonged sitting, and as we talked about as well, breaking it up as much as possible, so that we don't have those negative impacts. Alrighty, I'm now going to hand you back on to Mike, who's going to talk further about sedentary behaviour.
As with what Nick has mentioned, health risks can affect not only the employee's health, but also their workplace, with a reduction in productivity representing a large yet poorly characterized indirect cost to employers. Obesity is a health risk that a large proportion of the population face on a daily basis, and with work being a large part of their lives, this can be a big impact on workplace productivity. In a study performed by Gates et al., moderately or extremely obese workers were the most affected and experienced the greatest health-related work limitations, specifically regarding to time needed to complete tasks and the ability to perform jobs. These workers experienced a loss in productivity, which translated to an additional $506 annually in lost productivity of workers in this study. It's not all bad news though. Reductions in health risk can increase work productivity over time and affects both individuals and employers. Individuals who reduce one health risk factor improve their presenteeism by 9% and reduce absenteeism by 2%. In a study performed by Pelletier et al., a link was found when there was a reduction in health risk. This was associated with increased work productivity. With an increase in health of employees, work productivity can increase, and this is beneficial to the employer or business as they will increase their revenue and profit. Health risks can also influence productivity negatively, with an increase in health risks decreasing work productivity. In a study performed by Burden et al., perception-related risk factors such as life dissatisfaction, job dissatisfaction, poor health, and stress showed the greatest association with presenteeism. As the number of self-reported health risks increased, so did the percentage of employees reporting work limitations. Each additional risk factor was associated with a 2% reduction in work productivity. Medium and high risk individuals were greatly less productive compared to low risk by 6 and 12% respectively. The annual cost of lost productivity in this corporation was estimated at between 99 and 185 million per year. And to translate this to the employee level, that's between $1,400 and $2,600 per employee lost due to lost productivity from poor health. So investing a bit of money into the health and well-being of your employees can significantly decrease revenue loss. A healthy employee is a happy employee, and a happy employee works more effectively. Olivia will now take over with it, and we'll talk about ergonomics.
Many people believe that ergonomics are focused solely on the built environment and adjustment of the workplace, but it's important to understand that it's actually the study of people's efficiency in their working environment, so there are other factors at play. Our objectives here are to improve comfort, safety, and productivity within your workplace to allow for positive associations with work. Within ergonomics, it's vital to match prescriptions according to individual requirements, as we understand what may work for one person might not work for another. Through screening of each individual workspace and employee, we will be able to alter workspaces accordingly to suit each person's needs to ultimately increase mindfulness and awareness of body posture, core stability, and general well-being. Studies have shown awareness of core, increasing employee comfort, and reducing stress are strongly associated with increased productivity. An uncomfortable workspace can have a detrimental effect on a person's mental state without being overly apparent. If you experience discomfort at work, the brain is being sent these signals. Without the correct instructions, the brain can have difficulty feeding back a response to these signals and, after a duration of time, can associate the feelings of negativity with work itself. This can lead to a decrease in productivity, poor posture, fatigue, and ultimately more sick days. This is where we come in. Participation in this unique learning process will assist in developing positive associations with the working environment and detrain any aversions employees may have. Strategies that we have in line to assist you are ergonomic screening checklists to assess each individual's workspace. This allows self-assessment of the working environment so employees can alter it to suit their needs. We also provide questionnaires to assess and follow up with your employees on whether they are comfortable at work. So these can be used over time at different intervals to check in with your staff and make sure they're getting the most out of their working environment. We also provide worksheets for simple exercises you can do at your desk to decrease sedentary behaviour and get the body moving. These are simple strategies that can help you get your workplace running efficiently. While an ergonomic assessment and adjustment of a work area is important, and there are many standards that can be enforced, we are working to empower you and your employees to know your bodies and take control of your body and experience at work. This doesn't mean holding one particular posture all day, but knowing if and when a posture may not be right for you. We will give you the tools necessary to make your workplace a more positive and productive place to be, while also providing key skills that are applicable in all aspects of life.
So talking about playfulness, when we talk about workplace productivity or lifestyle productivity, might seem a little odd, but there's some interesting research coming out of the Sydney Playground Project, which I'll admit is a study being conducted with children. But I think what it actually starts to show is that when we start to reframe the idea of risk-taking and we start to allow imagination and creativity to come back into playfulness and having those moments of intense playfulness where kids can be wild and they can be free-spirited and they can challenge rules and they have the opportunity in a really safe, relatively safe environment to actually start to decide what risk-taking is. Now, as adults, I'm sure we all know how to play with a child. Some of you may even have children. But I'm talking about, as adults, really getting back to being playful. Being wild, not being judgmental of ourselves. Having the ability to laugh at ourselves and be happy and just be totally in the moment, where being creative is all that matters. Exploring our physical limits is all that matters. Understanding that we need to feel that sense of freedom that comes with play. And I think too often as adults we forget that, hooning around on a jet ski or taking time to colour in, those things that we used to find joyful, that we don't do anymore because life got in the way or our sense of responsibility got in the way. Now, in a nutshell, that playfulness is about redefining what risk-taking actually means, and really starting to explore and challenge what it is to be playful. Is that playfulness within yourself? Is it yourself engaging with the environment, like a playground structure here? And a little story off to the side here is I actually run, adult play sessions at those big climbing structures in parks. And adults have a ball doing it. We play frisbee, we crawl in the sandpit and play knee-ball soccer. And quite often we lose ourselves in what the play actually is. And it's a decent workout, but it's one of those times where you don't feel like you're working out because you're playing. I identify that with kids who come in off the playground and they are sweating and they are hot and they are exhausted. But they didn't realise that until you said to them, "Hey, little Johnny, come over here. You look quite hot. You need a drink." And that's because they got lost in the moment. Okay, and I think as adults, we don't lose ourselves in the moment enough. So that would be my challenge to you today, is to go out and find something that allows you to be playful and just do it. And in play, we're always aware of the risks. And it is about reframing that risk-taking behaviour that's still safe, but it pushes the boundary on what your physical or your understanding, your limits are. And where that playfulness starts to come in is looking at decision-making. And if we come up into novel learning, which is what play is, it's making sure that we've perceived what is going on in the world around us. We've recalled whether we know how to do it or how to interact or not. We've made plans and then we've performed. We've gone through that entire cycle, and I know that diagram looks incredibly complicated, and it is something that I do know off by heart. But what I'm putting it up on the screen for is not for you to learn it, but just to understand how complex decision making is. Okay? And the novel learning that we can do through play engages all 4 centres of that brain and that brain process. Okay, our routine behaviours, we don't make a plan for a routine, we just figure out that we need to do it. We recall in our memory that we have a plan already and it works, and we've done it enough times that we can just run with plan A and we don't need to go through plan B to Z, and then we do it. Now, habitual decision making, if you can really call it decision making, is about perceiving the need and just doing. You're in the car and you've been driving for 20, 30 years and you're changing gears. You're putting your blinker on. You're not even really aware that you've just changed gears or that you've moved your foot from the accelerator to the brake. You've just perceived that there's a change in the road ahead and you've done the outcome. Okay, that's a habit. And a lot of the time, I think when we're trying to be productive, we stick in this idea of routine. We have our routines. But routines don't tap into whether there needs to be a new plan. Whether that particular memory or recall of that plan that we have entirely fits that situation. And the idea of novel learning is that we start to engage more and more of our brain, which means that our decision making is of a much higher quality.
So we all know that everyone is different. Everyone has different learning styles, different preferences when they go to learn and what will stick with them for longer. Some people like to discuss material, others like to physically interact with learning, while others like to read and write information down. So when we've worked with our previous clients, we have specifically been able to target their preferred learning styles, and we found this out through a questionnaire. This gave us an in-depth view of which one works best for them. Most people like a multi-dimensional aspect to learning, so all the different styles coming together. So with our clients, we've been able to bring them all together and being able to make sure this information sticks. So the information will be able to stick for a long time, not just for a week after we've done it, for a long time in the future, so they continue using these good practices throughout their whole working life.
Okay, so what are the next steps? How can you boost productivity and look after your most complex machine, your humans? And if those humans are your employees, great, let's make them more productive for you. If that human that you've identified is you, Great, let's make you more productive so you can make your team more productive. So in terms of next steps, we have information packs that you can download from our website that look at, okay, here's some checklists, here's some worksheets around the information we've presented today, and you can go home and you can, implement them yourself. Okay. Next we have a face-to-face presentation. So if this webinar has really resonated with you and you'd like the opportunity for your team to ask more questions, to actually do the activities face-to-face with us, and there are a few more that we throw in on our face-to-face, so they can actually feel what their mechanical core is doing. They can start to feel and know if they have that developmental core that has actually been developed the way that it should. And that face-to-face presentation, is for teams based here in Sydney, and myself and the exercise science students can come out and run that presentation for you. So just pop into your survey at the end if you'd like to do that. Now, the next two components, we do need to make sure that you're the right person to be taking part in these two options. Now, the first one is our in-house training program. Now, that in-house training program is for small to medium-sized businesses who really identify with a health-related culture in their business. They want to make a difference in their team through health. Okay, that will have the face-to-face presentation, but also too there's a much more individualized approach to how each employee has access to the information that we've just provided, to the exercises specific for them that are going to help them to reduce those sedentary risk behaviours, to start developing core that's going to light them up for productivity, to learn all about their own personal self-regulation. Okay, so if that program sounds like it's something that your workplace would benefit from, then please pop that in your survey. You need to have a phone consult with myself, just a quick chat to double check that this is the right program for you and that your staff are likely to really take on board the information that you're taking the time and effort to bring back to the workplace, and for us just to get to know a little bit more about your workplace so that we can then tailor that in-house training program just for you. Okay, now putting all of the work and the team aside for a minute here, the weekend core reset is really about you. If what I've been speaking about and what the students have presented here today has really resonated with you as something that you personally need to do, then the core reset weekend is something that, I'd love to have a quick chat with you about. I think what we can achieve over a weekend, going through specifically each of these different core layers, each of the 4 layers, going through and working out exactly, and actually not just working it out, but really exploring and challenging and refining how to make you more productive, how to allow your body to feel in sync all the time through self-regulation, and to have an opportunity to be playful and to really explore playfulness. Okay, and start to build that decision-making process a lot faster. The core reset weekend is 2 days of your life that will set you up for the months and years ahead to be highly productive in every aspect of your life. And look, it's not for everyone. It is an intense weekend. It is an intense weekend. But look, if you're curious to know a bit more about whether it's right for you or not, simply pop in your feedback form that you'd like to have a chat, and make an appointment for just 15-minute quick phone call chat, and we can run through exactly what happens on that weekend, and whether it's right for you or not. So that brings me to the feedback. Guys, jump on the survey, book your next steps chat, and I would love to help you learn more about how to bring this valuable information back to your team. And I'd like to hear from you too, you know, in a month or a week's time, what changes have started to happen around your workplace. Okay, thank you so much for joining us on this webinar today, and I do look forward to talking to you at your next steps chat. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.